At this point, most of us can easily admit that Obsidian Entertainment never deserved to even become a large studio to begin with. They made 2 good games and lucked out, and that was pretty much it. They made Knights of the Old Republic, and more importantly, they made Fallout New Vegas. True lightning in a bottle, in fact. And after that, they have been creating disappointment, disasters, and slop and, well, Vogue slop, and then you just put that on repeat. The only other thing that Obsidian has done that's not complete garbage is Grounded. And Grounded by no means is an amazing game, but it's a good game. It's a fun game. And, well, this I think honestly proves the point that I and many others have been saying for a very long time, that you don't need to chase the next super big thing. You don't need to be Clear Obscure Expedition 33, you don't need to be Baldur's Gate, you don't need to be Helldivers Arc Raiders or whatever. You can just make a good, and more importantly, fun game. Now, I don't even know if we can honestly call Grounded a good game, but it is a fun game. It is definitely a fun game, and that's good enough at the end of the day, honestly. And people like it. But other than that, Obsidian has been a massive disappointment. The biggest disappointment probably has been, without a question, Avowed. Avowed's initial trailer was so promising. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. And then, what happens? Well, they bait and switch us into some woke shithole. Disappointing. When I saw the trailer, I was sold on Avowed. I was hyped. I thought that we were going to see good things. But the more information that we got, the more we understood that, wow, this is really just an egregiously pitiful bait and switch. Because it was. And above, obviously, above all of that, easily, is the disappointment of The Outer Worlds 2. Now, granted, The Outer Worlds 1 was already a disappointment, but hey, it was freshly off the high of New Vegas, so obviously it was a massive success. Though, also, obviously, the critiques were in, and the critiques were safe, boring, very predictable, very linear, and not enough choices. Not even a real roleplay game. And The Outer Worlds 2 just literally, well, they doubled down on that, and they thought that their problem why it didn't succeed was, oh, there weren't enough funny guns. Yeah, no, that was not even close to the problem. And now, well, what's gonna happen to Obsidian? Who honestly knows? The Outer Worlds has failed, but it's their best current thing that's currently kind of happening, and at least it has potential, so there's going to be an Outer Worlds 2. Not Outer Worlds, but Avowed 2. And Outer Worlds has been pretty much shelved as we can tell. Maybe there's going to be an expansion, but who knows? I personally think, hopefully not, because it's not going to work out.
Obsidian Entertainment, ladies and gentlemen, have a lot of love for this team. You know, they've brought me some of my favorite games of all time, everything from Star Wars Knights of the Republic 2, probably my favorite, is my favorite RPG of all time. Everything from that to Fallout New Vegas, another favorite RPG of all time. And they've just been such great mercenaries, right? They would bring us South Park Stick of Truth. Like, when they were just fighting and...
The irony that this guy says that he likes New Vegas, but he also is a fan of the Fallout TV show, which does everything it can to destroy everything we love about New Vegas, to make it so that there cannot be a prequel, sequel, or anything to it, because everything that New Vegas had got killed. Mr. House, the Legion, the NCR, the Brotherhood of Steel even is getting absolutely shafted in writing.
Scratching and clawing their way to contracts. I think Obsidian was a really exciting company, but I imagine that was not a fun position for them to be in. Unlike a lot of companies that have joined Xbox, Obsidian seems to have really improved in that time. They've gotten more projects out. I think their quality and polish has gone up a bit. They used to be known for games like Alpha Protocol, which are really buggy. New Vegas was really buggy, where they have these great things, but they lack polish, and they don't have to be polished to a shine, but like enough to make the game enjoyable to play at least, right? Which is something you really saw in the Outer Worlds too. 2025 was deemed...
What? I can't tell if Mr. Matty is trying to get a new paycheck here, or his opinions just garbage.
The year of Obsidian. That's because Obsidian launched The Outer Worlds 2, Avowed, as well as Grounded 2, all in a single year. It's very impressive. Now, Schreier here actually went and visited Obsidian Entertainment here. And what we have is a really interesting report on how Obsidian feels about the year.
Oh yeah, I read this article. We talked about it. Obsidian literally says, yeah, the Outer Worlds and Avowed are financial disasters. Surprise, surprise! It's not like I already told you that.
Of Obsidian. And to kind of put it in simple terms, it's a bit of a lie because it's a marketing twist. And Obsidian isn't necessarily super thrilled about the year they had because of what it actually indicated for them to have 3 games coming out in the same year, but also the sales of those games here. We're going to go ahead and read parts of this article here because it's Bloomberg and they do have like gifted articles and then they have also articles you pay for. So I don't know how much we can show because I remember one time I showed a Game Informer preview in the past and Game Informer literally reached out. They're like, hey, this will be a problem if you keep doing this. And I'm like, whoa, I'm just doing my job, man. Chill the fuck out. So with that, let's just go through little snippets of the article here. Let's talk about Fergus Urquhart. They said last year, the developer released 3 games, a rare and impressive achievement for a studio of its size, but 2 of them failed to meet the sales forecast by Obsidian parent company Microsoft. They're not disasters, Urquhart said. I'm not going to say this was a kick in the teeth. It's more.
Oh, they are absolutely disasters. Especially the Outer Worlds 2, okay? The Outer Worlds 1 is on Steam, and the Outer Worlds 2 had a lower player peak than the Outer Worlds 1. The Outer Worlds 1 on Steam was 2 years after launch only. It wasn't exclusive on Xbox for 2 years before it launched on Steam. And the Outer Worlds 2 was day 1 on Steam. And don't give me any of that BS. Oh, what about their Game Pass? What about your IQ? What about that? Anyway, on Game Pass, we actually checked it. It did not even breach top 30 or something like that, if I remember correctly. None of these shithole games actually breached top 10. I don't remember when was the situation when the last Xbox AAA release breached top 10 in their own charts. So Obsidian's The Outer Worlds 2, without question, was a massive disaster. It wasn't just a disaster, it was a massive disaster. Everyone was making fun of the game. Everyone. Pretty much and it didn't help the fact that the game released that stupid trailer. That stupid trailer where they said, well, you can't sleep with the companions. Have you seen your companions? No one wants to sleep with them. We want to get them off the screen.
Or like, that sucks. What are we learning? Says a day after one of these breakfast gatherings, Urquhart is sitting with a Bloomberg Business Week reporter in a conference room at Obsidian's Irvine, California office on a pleasant, humdrum day. Okay, we don't care about any of that. Let's keep reading here. The company is trying to navigate a shaky games market as well as turmoil in the corner of Microsoft. They talk about the games that they've released since they were acquired, but most importantly, they mention here that Grounded 2 was a big hit. The disappointing results from the other 2 have led Obsidian to think a lot about how much we put into the games, how much time we spend on them, and how long they take. Both Avowed and The Outer Worlds 2 were in development for more than 6 years, inflating.
It's not the fact how much they spent on the game, it's the fact that Avowed and The Outer Worlds 2 was just woke shit. That's it. If I had to describe The Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed, it's pretty much the same game in the same vein of being woke garbage. You had your girl bosses, you had your absolutely butt-ugly character designs, and, well, all of that good stuff. The Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed were the most typical examples of wokeness ruining games. These games maybe could have stand a chance if they weren't woke slop. But they were. And above that, not only were they woke, but their dialogues were horrible. Horrible. Especially The Outer Worlds 2, okay? Avowed was slightly better, I guess, but The Outer Worlds 2 was just ass, okay? Role-playing options got pretty. The way that they did role-playing options, there was no roleplay, okay? Your biggest roleplay was, do you want to use a repair kit to fix a door, or do you want to open with your muscles? Yes, that was literally peak roleplay when it came to this game. It was ass. unbelievably ass, in fact. It was crazily bad, okay? And that was not even the peak of it, by the way. The peak of it was the fact that this is pretty much even what Outer Worlds 2 defenders actually said. It was the fact that the dialogue was just beyond saving, okay? There was nothing probably. The whole game needed to be rewritten because the most common critique, constructive critique, I guess that you could say about the Outer Worlds 2 was the fact that no one ever wanted to pick any options for dialogue. Every single option in the dialogue options for the average player was unappealing. Imagine you create a dialogue with an NPC and you have like 5 options and you don't want to click any of them. Yeah, that was Outer Worlds. And that was not a singular instance, it was the whole game. People just hated the dialogue options because they represented nothing. They didn't represent motivations, they didn't represent proper choices, they didn't represent anything. They were just like hee hee ha ha stupidity at its best. Okay? For example, the reason why Baldur's Gate 3 was so successful and is still successful is because you got, even when you only had like 3 dialogue options to pick, you could resonate with them. You could actually pick it because that felt like something you would say. In the Other Worlds too, that was never an option. And also in Avowed, that was also very, very bad in a lot of cases. And it had a lot of fluff dialogue. For example, I am an emissary. Does that change anything? No. You get the same dialogue, but you just get to say, I'm an emissary, which is just useless fluff.
Their production costs and the company's financial expectations. One of Urquhart's missions is to cut down development timelines to 3 or 4 years per title, which, by the way, as a little side note here, if you ask me, that's an ideal window of time. I think more game developers need to embrace that window of time because I want your games to be part of like eras of my life, not like blips on an era of my life. Does that make sense? Like, I think of series I'm really attached to, where I think of franchises I've gone through. BioShock is one. BioShock 1, 2, and Infinite all came out while I was going from like middle school into high school. That was an era of my life, and it's very memorable.
Dude, we didn't talk about BioShock. There was some kind of BioShock game that got canceled. They covered it, but I don't remember too much about it. But BioShock has potentially room for coming back. There have been things talking about BioShock, which is very, very good.
Because it carried me through an era of my life. But if we're having BioShock 1 in 2007, BioShock 2 is in 2015, and BioShock 3 is in 2022, you're like completely missing the window, man. And it's like I have to always go back and replay the games to remember why I cared about it. So yeah, to say Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 took 6 years each is kind of crazy, because I think with Avowed, you see it in a really bad way, and with Outer Worlds 2, you see it in a kind of good way, but it's unfortunate it didn't pan out here. We'll talk about that a little bit more here.
Really?
They get into a little bit of how expenses are swelling, growth is stalling, developers are trying to survive, and basically they're trying to build a game that's cheap so that they can have a hit on their hands. So missing a target can be fatal. Obsidian appears to be on relatively firm ground. For divisions of Xbox, sales are just one part of the equation, and RPG tends to gain momentum over time here. Xbox themselves did comment on this, saying Obsidian develops games that are central to our vision of reaching more players than ever before. And they added that the developer demonstrates the creative excellence and range that continues to strengthen Xbox's portfolio. Does this mean anything to me at all when I read Xbox is happy with someone? Absolutely not. I think the reason is very obvious as to why that is the case here. But continuing on here, we know that Obsidian was in Dark Waters back in 2012, and that's actually because
Wait, what the hell was this comment right here just now? I thought the Outer Worlds 2 was pretty good. I rented it from GameFly, though. So, dude, listen, if you're renting fucking games, you don't deserve to have an opinion, okay? Like, I rented a game and I thought it was good. Dude, you just proved that your opinion is worth less than shit. Congratulations.
We know that Obsidian was in Dark Waters back in 2012, and that's actually because, as mentioned here in this report, Microsoft canceled one of its big projects, and it actually forced them into Kickstarter. And this is why they were able to stay afloat, is because of their fans. And funny enough, they would then later go on to sell off to Microsoft. And one of the pitches that they made to Microsoft was Skyrim meets Destiny. And this is what Sawyer had to say about this. I thought this was hilarious. He said, my first thought when I saw this was,
Destiny, a dead and destroyed franchise. Skyrim, eh? Something that has no future. Wow, what a combination.
I don't think there's a team on the planet that could execute on this, Josh Sawyer said. 2 years later, Obsidian stripped out the multiplayer, and a year later assigned a new director to the project. By the time Avowed came out, it was in the works for nearly 7 years. So Sawyer saw it immediately, which is why this dude is so valuable. He's a friggin' genius, right? He immediately was like, there's no way we can do this. They ignored that. They went on with it. We saw how Avowed turned.
I absolutely have no idea why he's calling a dude a genius for saying, oh, you can't make something super large. Like, Skyrim, but Destiny is so achievable, it's not even funny. And you're calling this guy a genius because he said it's bad? What the fuck?
Out here. Continuing on down here at the bottom of the article a little bit more, that the 3 games were all ready to release in 2025 was actually mostly a coincidence. They say releasing them all in one calendar year made for a slick marketing beat called the Year of Obsidian, as Xbox called it, but it also
Yeah, I have not even heard this, and I follow this news. Chances are none of you have ever heard about something like that.
taxed the studio's resources. The group has around 280 employees, far fewer than teams like Larian as well as CD Projekt Red. This is something, by the way, that I've talked about really extensively in the past. I've said so many times that people who treat Obsidian like they're a big AAA team are wrong, because they take this like 200 plus person workforce and they split them up among like 4 projects. And so now you have like AA size teams making these bigger than average games here. But Obsidian support.
Well, you know what would actually help us not think that Obsidian is a AAA developer? Well, the fact that they aren't, because they make shit. But the fact that they release their games in AAA pricing, okay? The Outer Worlds 2 was a disaster long before we saw any trailers of it even, just because the price point speculation was $60. Initially it was supposed to be 70, 80 or something like that, and then they minus 10 because of the outrage. And yeah, don't sell your games for AAA prices if you're not a AAA studio.
Teams were stretched thin, with frazzled staff leaping frantically from one game to the next. Spacing those releases helps the company manage its resources and not burn everyone out, Sawyer says. It's not good to release 3 games in the same year. It's the result of things going wrong. This is why I said that the Year of Obsidian's a bit of a lie, because this is how Obsidian sees it. They're like, we failed as a team. We made bad choices. Development timelines got too long. Sales weren't good. And we had 3 games come out in a year, and everyone was burnt out after the fact. So it's impressive they got 3 games out, that they didn't cancel any of these. Like, Avowed is a game that was a candidate for cancellation, no doubt. Like, we're going to strip the multiplayer out of this thing. Why does it need to exist? So I like that they still gave these games a shot at the end of the day. But I think it's really fascinating to see that it was kind of marked as maybe not exactly a failure, but a learning experience for Obsidian Entertainment. And I hope that's what they do, is learn, because I want them to get back to the top of the mountain here. They talk about a little bit with cutting time out of the development process. What can they do to accomplish that here? Grounded 2 offered some lessons for a better way forward. Obsidian assigned a few senior staff to orchestrate the production in Montreal, 3,000 miles away. For those who don't know why this is the case, because I actually had to remind myself here, Eidos Montreal actually helped out Obsidian Entertainment with making Grounded 2. Obsidian had some major help, writes GameFile, not just with community feedback, but the game is co-developed by Eidos Montreal, who, yes, was behind Deus Ex and Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know if you call that like rising to the top or falling.
Yeah, Deus Ex is a dead franchise now. The newest game completely. You know, and then Guardians of the Galaxy is just kind of slop.
From grace. But yeah, they are Embracer Studio, or Embracer owned studio, and we know that they worked on, of course, Perfect Dark at one point in time. But
the fact that people actually watched the Perfect Dark trailer and thought that it's a real game and it's not fake is so hilarious. Bro, like, how can you not tell the difference between real and fake? It's so easy. And people were like, oh, look at Perfect Dark, it's so good, it's almost finished. Oh my lord, yes, yes. Thankfully, they canceled Perfect Cut, and that would have been a disaster. Well, in any case, everything about Obsidian is a disaster. I don't know if they even have a future at this point. Now, granted, all of these things are Xbox money injections for Obsidian, so they're not going anywhere. But the reality is they're currently getting just propped up by the fact that Xbox wants to put them on Game Pass. If Xbox wants to put you on Game Pass, there's a substantial amount of money that gets just instantaneously pumped into you. And, well, needless to say, for Obsidian, that means that they're good for now, okay? Technically, they contribute to Microsoft's money flow and all of that, because, Xbox giving money to another company that's owned by Microsoft is not it's legit, obviously. Yeah, this is a legit thing in finance, sadly. That Microsoft can have two sister companies or two subsidiaries in this case, and them giving them themselves money somehow actually contributes to their money flow and is a good thing. But I mean, how long they can do it? Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 was not just a disaster, it was a complete shit show at the end of the day. It was a massive failure. It didn't sell well, and the fact that it was on Game Pass, no one bought Game Pass to play it, is probably a complete just shot. It's just shooting yourself in the leg. So, how long can Obsidian Entertainment actually keep this up is a very good question. Microsoft at some point is going to either put money elsewhere or they're just going to figure out, wait a minute, we're just burning money for no good reason at this point. Might as well stop doing it. I think that's going to happen, and that's when Obsidian gets absolutely wasted. Because they have failed too much. They have failed too much for too long of a time, and no one's exactly ecstatic about anything that they're doing. Think about it. The biggest chances that we're currently getting from Obsidian is an Avowed expansion, which is pretty much guaranteed. Avowed 2, which no one probably cares about at this point. And a very, very likely, sadly at this point, expansion for the Outer Worlds 2, because they're kind of desperate. Not because it's a good idea, but they're kind of desperate. And maybe they want to actually see confirmation as the Outer Worlds just dead as a franchise. So, it's not looking good in any way for Obsidian Entertainment, and, well, sucks to suck. What can I honestly say? Anyway, that was Mr. Matty Plays 10 out of 10. Bye!